Welcome, everybody, to One Life Network. And one of my favorite sayings was C.S. Lewis said, everybody loves the idea of forgiveness until they have something to forgive. And I don't know about you, if you've ever been through something in your life where someone did do something that you needed to forgive them and you found the struggle going on. Well, I have, and probably these guys have, except for maybe Braxton, and handle it well. But astonishing thing happened that was watched worldwide by hundreds of millions of people. Maybe you saw this, but Erika Kirk said this, and we think that's worth talking about because there's a lot to unpack here. So this is Erika Kirk.
On the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man, that young man, I forgive him.
It's pretty astonishing when you think about it. And so, any of you watch it live?
Yes.
You didn't know it was coming? So I kind of knew it was coming when I finally saw it. You did watch it live?
I saw it live, yeah.
Yeah. And how did you react?
Oh, the whole time that I was watching her speak, especially after having heard her speak the other day after he died, I was just, me and a friend of mine were like, okay, if she cracks, we're going to crack. And we cracked, and we were bawling and crying and snotting all over everywhere. I mean, that's how it was. Because how do you not connect with that? Here's this woman and that young man. It's like she's thinking about him with love in the midst of this. Yeah. She knows her husband would have loved him and cared about him. It's powerful.
Yeah, and that was the context of it. She kind of said it before that about how he really, truly wanted to help, especially young men, find purpose in life and hope and all the rest. So, were you watching it as well, or?
I didn't watch it live. I had to watch it later, but I didn't know it was coming when I watched the clip. Someone just sent me.
Oh, okay, yeah.
A friend of mine actually sent me the clip. Was like, you just got to watch this from the memorial today. So when I pulled it up, and then I was like, you know, no, absolutely. What about you?
I saw it from a Forrest Frank video actually, because he played that. And Forrest Frank, he's a singer guy.
Lemonade.
Yeah. So he played that clip and then just talked about forgiveness and why it's important and stuff and all that. So, but I mean, watching it, it's very. You can tell she's struggling because it is a hard thing to do to forgive somebody that has done that, and so it's just. But she points back to Jesus, which Charlie did often. Always pointed back and just said, "Hey, he did it." So Jesus forgave those that were killing him in the midst of like his brutal punishment, and so I can forgive this guy because of that.
Yeah, and that brings up a difficult question about the whole issue of forgiveness. And like I said at the beginning, I always felt like I was a pretty forgiving person and all the rest, but then I ran into a situation in my life where I really did have something to forgive, and that was a very, very, very difficult thing to do. And sometimes you still feel like you wonder, because I kind of follow the outline of the Lord's Prayer, and that's built into that thing every single day.
Yeah.
And you kind of question. So what do you do about that? I mean, how do you, because does someone have to ask for forgiveness? Because obviously this guy didn't. He probably is pretty callous at this point and would say, I would do it again, given the chance or whatever. I mean, how do you handle that?
I don't know, man. Like, one of the things I've always said about forgiveness, and there's been a lot of things in life that, you know, I've experienced that I had to forgive, and then it makes me, like, when I watch a video like this, I go, man, I am petty and pathetic in comparison to, like, what I struggle forgiving versus what she has to forgive. Like,
I've always thought that about you.
Okay, you're not alone. Get in line.
Let's use her as shorthand from now on.
Erika. Yeah, just use that and then.
Yeah.
But the thing for me is that, like, I also know that forgiveness sometimes can be a daily struggle because, you know, I'll think I forgave. And then I wonder just how often she's going to have to just keep reminding herself to do that. Because I think certain days that bitterness can come back up. But, I mean, what we see here is a powerful and palatable moment of what Christianity actually teaches. She's not going and saying she wants his head on a pike or anything like that. She's saying, I forgive him. She's showing true love and grace and mercy. And this really does contrast against the violence that we just witnessed.
What was hard for you to forgive in that moment? Like, what was it, because the other person didn't ask for forgiveness?
The struggle is that I still have kind of the theological tension that I live inside of because some of Jesus' stories actually kind of imply that, you know, if your brother comes to you even 7 times a day, but he's still coming to you. And when you're dealing with someone who hasn't come to you and they would even view their behavior as correct or right or whatever else, and it keeps going, that's where I entered into a lot of problems, and a friend of mine helped me with that. But that was what it was.
Yeah.
And it felt like genuine violation.
Because for me, there's one moment in life that sticks out of that, because there was something that I responded in a way that wasn't right, but the person that did the offense, like I damaged some property on accident, but somebody had done something. I threw a pumpkin at a person and they moved, and I damaged a car. And all this stuff.
Wait, who are you forgiving in this?
That story kind of goes down. I threw a pumpkin at a person.
It's a weird thing.
Did he forgive you is the question.
Yeah. So, but the thing was, like,
hard to track.
I wasn't going after it. Like, it was something that was done to me in the situation, and so I responded in a way that wasn't right. But they were like the perpetrators of like why I responded the way that I did. I know it was
Wait a minute, back up. Hold on, this deserves some space. You're saying that someone wronged you,
yes,
and in the moment you happen to be holding a pumpkin, and you threw it at them, and you missed, and it hit a fence and damaged their property.
No, it hit a car.
A car.
It
was the guy's car.
Yeah. They threw the pumpkin at me. A couple of them. I caught one and threw it back. So just like in reaction.
Okay.
They were throwing stuff at me. So I was out doing stuff.
I think if you catch the one they threw, then they're out. Right.
So,
that's what.
Well, all right. There's a lot. Okay.
So
But anyway,
what's the lesson here?
So what I'm saying is, but like it was all my fault. Like they didn't take any blame for anything. I was like, I wasn't sitting there throwing stuff at you guys. I'm cleaning up. I'm doing all this stuff, and then they come at me, and I just did the same thing back and happened to damage a car in the process. But it was like they didn't ask for forgiveness, and it kind of grew to this thing of like they admitted no wrong, and I was like, I wasn't out looking to do this kind of thing. And so it was very hard for me to forgive that. I mean, like even like a couple years after, I was like, okay, and I just finally had to write something out of like, okay, I just forgive it and let it go, because it was just this bitterness. That's what like the Bible talks about. Don't give the devil a foothold on anger, because it turns into other things. And I just found myself being bitter towards these people, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I know I did wrong, and I admitted that, but they never admitted wrong, and it's tough because you're like, oh, this person didn't say anything. And so yeah, for Erika to forgive somebody that's probably not asking for it, or maybe never will.
Well, I'm kind of the guy that you described yourself as previously being. I haven't experienced, and I know I haven't experienced the level of betrayal and things that perhaps you haven't. Will, for sure, I know that some things about his background. But with me, I did have a serious betrayal some years ago. And when that happened, the forgiving wasn't that. I've never really had too much of a problem with the forgiving. And I've actually been concerned, like, does that mean that I don't care enough or something that I'm able to forgive and not worry about it? So I don't know. And also it could be that I just, when I reach a certain level of betrayal in my life, I'll understand totally what that's like.
Or maybe you're just more holy than us.
I mean, that's always a possibility.
That's what I said. I pointed that out before. I was counting on it.
You prophesied it, yeah.
The bar is pretty low over here. So
Yeah.
don't take it and let it get
I get mad at pumpkins.
But I struggled with what does it mean to forgive? How do you know you have, like, and she didn't have to say that publicly. She didn't have, no one on the planet would have held it against her if she hadn't done this in the timing that she would have. If she would have grown bitter over the years, they might have counseled her to, but she didn't have to do that. But what does it mean to forgive? How do you know you have, for like legit?
Well, that's a good
Well, you haven't yet, so what about you?
If I can see a certain car without throwing pumpkins in it.
that is an extremely difficult question in many ways, because I think it depends on the level of hurt and resentment you are still holding within yourself. Like if you're still extremely resentful, there is still bitterness there. So you haven't really forgiven them. So an idea of forgiveness is being able to like think about it, know you were wronged, acknowledge it, but not have that same amount of resentment. Like you are now at peace with it. You have made peace with it. Not to get too much in my own personal story, but just today, actually, I haven't. My mom has dementia, and many people know there's a lot of abuse in my childhood because of her. And I just got a picture of my mom from my aunt, and it's literally heartbreaking just to see her. And it was like one of those weird moments where I had like compassion there. And it's like, that's how I know that I definitely have forgiven my mom from the past, because I look at her state now and just go, that's heart-wrenching, and so it's different. So making sure you don't have that resentment in your heart. And if you do, then you need to keep saying the Lord's Prayer, man.
And I think if you can wish good on somebody that has wronged you and actually pray for their like blessing and benefit and things like that without, because a lot of times like you forgive somebody and then something bad happens, like, hey, come up. It's like, you're like, yeah, I know. But if you can genuinely say, okay, I release this and I'm going to pray for their good, that's when I think like it's
but that raises another question. I think is talked about societally. We can go ahead and cue up the Donald Trump got up a little later, and it was kind of comical. Let's just admit it in some sense. But he brings up a good topic that. So does her forgiveness mean that she can't take some kind of satisfaction, for lack of a better way of putting it, for him to get the punishment of the law that is due him? Yeah. Because even God says, vengeance is mine, does it through the government and all that. Now, out in Utah, they do have the death penalty. They've been talking about that from the beginning. So what should, having forgiven him, what will it be like for her to, if let's say he does go all the way to the chair or wherever they're taking him?
Yeah.
What happens back? But let's go ahead and watch the
firing squad in Utah.
He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent. And I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erika. But now Erika can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
Classic Trump.
Well, there you go. So it does get into a lot of things. When I have forgiven someone, is it okay at all to kind of root for the law to be carried out? Are those complete paradoxes, contradictions?
See, I don't think so, because, a lot of people love to point as though it's a contradiction between the Old Testament teaching under the law of Moses about what kind of justice should be dispensed versus Jesus' notion of turn the other cheek. And they see a contradiction there. I don't see a contradiction there. I think that the same God in the Old Testament is the God in the New Testament. And people think of the Old Testament God as being angry and mean. I think that you see judgment in the Old Testament and love as well, just like you do in the New Testament. But when it comes to that particular issue, Jesus was speaking to you in your interpersonal relationships in my kingdom. As my people, you're to turn the other cheek. You're supposed to show that kind of forgiveness and that sort of thing. But to say that the law of Moses is unjust, Jesus would have never said such a thing. It is the very standard of justice. I can't imagine a more one-to-one ratio of justice than eye for eye, tooth for tooth. That's your justice. Jesus wasn't saying that something like that shouldn't be done at the level of the governmental involvement. Right. It's more about in your interpersonal relationships with me, it should be a turn the other cheek sort of thing. And I can't, if some horrible person, some horrible terrorist or something does some horrible thing and a bunch of people lose their lives because of that, we can forgive if we're the one that's wrong. We can forgive that. But that doesn't mean that we don't understand on an intellectual level that no, justice has to be done, and we feel the good. It's good when justice is brought. That's a good thing.
Well, that's because the state does have its own responsibilities. And this is like the thing when you get into talking to even things with Israel and all the stuff going on. There is a level of responsibility the state will always have, which is to keep order amongst the citizenry. So even though you might forgive, like in what you pointed this out pre-show, but Trump represents kind of the state in this situation. So yes, even though we might forgive, but the state still has responsibility to issue justice. Otherwise, if the state was just interpersonally forgiving everyone too, there is no, it could easily become chaos. Now granted, I know a lot of people, he was self-deprecating, and it is humorous just because you're like, what? But especially it's like such a contrast. The part of me though was also just like, dude, can you just let that. I was just like, she should have closed out the show with that. They should have just left it, because it almost felt like bitter water after just watching such a let's call that what that was. That was a holy moment, a really good thing that showed the image of Christ, and then just that. And I was just like,
so did he say I hate my enemies? Is that what he?
Yeah.
Because obviously, Jesus says love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, and so the idea of justice happening, because I think somebody brought up earlier, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. It's going to come whether in this life or the next, and so there is going to be a reckoning for all. I mean, we're all facing that, and so
and we're supposed. It says consciously leave room for God's wrath, and it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So what should be, like, I wonder, does he know that she did that? Has he seen it? And what did he think? Did he just hard-hearted towards it, or did it soften him at all? That'd be a curiosity. And what should be her frame of mind if he does literally get executed? Because they invite families and stuff. You're allowed to watch that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, then God says he takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked. So there's interesting tension you're always walking through.
I think it was a few years ago, there was a church shooting, and like a guy came in the back of a church and then shot several people in the church. And then the people that were there went to his trial, and they all like got up and said they forgave him. And that was the...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. That was another crazy one of like, hey, I'm not going to, like, I mean, they were very much like, hey, I'm not going to get to see my kid graduate because he's dead now because of you, but I forgive you. Like, they like went through all the things but they were going to miss because of what he did. But then they were all like, but I forgive you. Like, yeah, because it was a lot of people that were in that room, like saying, hey, we're for you. And I don't remember what his response to that was, but
Larry Nasser, is that the guy's name with the gymnasts who was a sexual predator?
Oh, yeah.
People that were gymnasts. And I include this in chapter 3 of my book, Core Facts, to make this point, because we get to read, I included there, the victim impact statement that one of the victims read to him. And she talked about C.S. Lewis and that God is the foundation for morality, and without God you don't have a foundation for morality, you just kind of decide, and all these kind of things. She went into all of that, but she said she definitely wanted justice to be brought. She was pushing and said so for the fullest extent of the law to be brought, because that's what's good, because justice is good. And then at the end she still said, but my greatest desire is that you come to know the Lord Jesus Christ, become my brother, and we love you, and all this kind of stuff. Wow. It's really, really powerful. I think that's the chord, is we have to understand that justice is good. We say justice is good. Our country wants to say that right now, culturally, that justice is good, and we should all agree about that. But the thing about it is, sometimes when someone does something horribly wrong, like everybody always says you can't go very long without bringing up Hitler. Fine. But if we caught Hitler and he hadn't killed himself after World War II, we caught Hitler, it would not be good to give him a hug and say, now just don't go doing Holocaust again. That would be bad. Why would it be bad? It would be bad because justice hadn't been done. Well, so we can forgive, but then the justice...
Forgiveness isn't saying, okay, what you did was okay. Like, it's never that. I honestly, like, forgiveness is that, like, almost a relief for me, because I'm not holding it in anymore.
It's a release of a debt. So you're saying, I release you of what I like, of your owage to me or whatever.
Yeah, and so that is something that is very tough, because you're like, I'm not going to hold you in offense anymore. And so I mean, it is a personal thing to kind of get rid of, and there's a weight off of you once you do it, but it's a tough road to do that.
But to that point there, like with some of the, like with what she's like going through, and then like learning how to wrestle that justice aspect to it, but still seeing the humanity, like that's when she says, that young man, you could tell she's still seeing his humanity, and like a life thrown away is the tragedy of that part, because that's the thing, is like there's another family involved in that too, his family, and his siblings. And so it's like, I mean, as Eric, I'm sure it's just like, it's a lot, but I mean, there's a show, and I'm not saying everyone should go see it, because there's a lot of like vulgarity as far as language and stuff and content's concerned, but it's called Shrinking. And one of the things is, it's with Harrison Ford, it's on Apple TV, but one of the things that happens is there's a drunk driver who kills this guy's wife when she's young. Well, it's the very beginning, it's whatever. But then it's literally the show wrestling with the dad who lost his wife from a drunk driver, and the daughter. And long story short, the daughter actually ends up like getting to know this guy accidentally, but then starts getting to know the guy who actually did that, and she starts trying to like make peace with it. But you see the dad getting mad about it, and it's like one of those things where like, this is really. I liked the wrestling that I saw happening in the show, where the dad's like, that guy ruined our life, but her also going, I'm now seeing the broken person that does happen to hurt us. And it was just one of those things where I told Cal, I'm like, this is not a Christian show by any stretch of the imagination. I was talking to my wife, but
make sure you know that, yeah.
But at the same time, they are wrestling with a very human thing, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. And that's why it's important that we do forgive.
Well, helping people with that, like, what has helped you reach that place where you can forgive? Like, it came up a while ago for me, one of the most important principles for me wrestling through all of it, because again, for most of my life, I had some wrongs. It took some dings here and there, but went through a thing where it was more than just a little ding on the door. It was like a
Mine was a ding on the
kind
door.
of thing. Literally.
Bumpkin.
But there was a thing that was kind of in this ongoing, and it was a mess. But one of the things that helped me a lot was forgiveness is not calling a bad thing a good thing. Sometimes we have this mentality like I have to get to a place where I say, it's all good, man. It's okay. What you did was okay. No, it's not. It was not okay. So that helped me. That was just one of the rungs on the ladder that helped me get there. But as you've kind of walked through some things, what's other stuff that helped you get to a place like, well, we can't get to her place, but
for me, there's two things. One, it was the amount of time and effort of my anger towards this person, of the conversations I was having in my head where I just roasted them and all this stuff. And like, there's all this stuff. I'm like, this person doesn't care. Like, I mean, they're not thinking about any of these things. And so I'm like, I'm spending so much time and effort on this mentally and like just emotionally and all this stuff. And it didn't matter to them at all. And so I'm like, why am I carrying this if they don't care? And so to release that was good. And then the parable where it's the king, that this guy comes to the king and he owes him like millions of dollars or whatever. And then the king's like, okay, throw him in jail. He's going to work. His whole family, they're going to work and all this stuff. And then the guy's like, hey, give me some more time. And the king's like, you know what? Actually, your debt is forgiven. You don't have any more of this debt. And the guy's like, yes. He runs out, finds a guy that owes him like $10. And he's like, hey, you owe me this money. And the guy's like, well, I'll pay you back later. He's like, wow, I'm throwing you in jail. Threw him in jail and the king finds out about it. And he's like, you wicked servant. Like, he's like, I forgave you so much. And then you have this small debt that you can't even forgive. And for me, it was like, okay, the weight of my sin will never, like, because Jesus died on the cross and forgave my sins, because of that, there's this huge debt that's been forgiven that I will never realize.
That may be the best I've ever heard that told, what you just told. But also, like, you're kind of saying what I thought, which I don't, like I say, that's not one of my personal struggles is with forgiveness as much as some people, I think. But Romans chapter 12, verse 18 talks about how that if we can, we should be at peace with all men. And you're not at peace when you're experiencing all that inside of you and you know, they're not right. And so my thing is always, there's just such a relief. I think somebody, maybe Will said that already. There's just a relief when you can finally be like, yeah, I'm done. I forgive you. I'm over it. I'm not, and I may not be over it. That's not fair. You know, we've said you may still have to deal with it, but I forgive you. I'm not going to have this resentment and bitterness about it.
But then when you do that, you're also putting accountability now back into you, right? Like, so if I say I forgive you, and I have forgiven you, then now the accountability is here for me to make sure I don't randomly pull that up and hold over your
that's
head.
a good point.
So now it's also an accountability thing of like, you know what? No,
Married people.
I have forgiven you. I have walked away. But one of the other things that has helped me with forgiving people is realizing this, like, the amount of times I've sinned against people. Like, I have sinned against people, and to say otherwise is a fairy tale land. So the fact that it's like, I expect people to forgive me and my screw-ups, my clumsiness, my whatever, well, then is really arrogant, hypocritical, and very privileged and entitled to want everyone to forgive you, but then you get to hold on to that resentment for others.
Yeah, and that's what that parable was really getting at.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
You've been forgiven so much, like anybody else's offense against you is a small thing compared to what you've been forgiven. And it's
But the tricky caveat
Yeah.
is in all of Jesus' stories that I know of, except the one on the cross, he says, forgive them for they do not know what they're doing. He was forgiving some guys that were down there. They truly didn't know what was going on. They're throwing dice or whatever, and they're ignoring him and just doing what they always did. But in those stories, the servant that owed the $10 goes to the guy and says, hey, I owe you $10. What do you do with people who haven't or probably never will ask for forgiveness? Even the 70 times 7 one, he comes to you and says,
Right. Well,
forgive me.
In Matthew 18, 15 through 20, it talks about, you know, if your brother repents, you have gained your brother, right?
Yeah.
So I think I love everyone else's take on this. The way I've always taken it is that there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. That forgiveness is the releasing of the debt. Reconciliation is the coming back together. And so I can release you of the debt, but it doesn't mean we're going to be best buds again. So it's possible I have gone through forgiveness with certain people who have admitted their wrongs, and then we've come back together and become friends again. Other people, you know, not so much. I've forgiven, but, you know, we've clearly parted.
Does Matthew 18 come into that, where like if your brother sins against you, go and show them their fault? But that's tough when they don't
Yeah, but
realize
if they
that
say, well,
I didn't do anything. Yeah. That's when you punch it.
or hit him with a pumpkin, apparently.
Yeah, pumpkin.
But that was the struggle. That was the thing that I always kind of got in these prayerful debates with the Lord. Like, okay, in your stories, it assumes the request, which I could do, but I have a feeling I'm never going to get the request.
So how do you address that for us, Brett?
I don't. I'm here for counseling.
This is a counseling.
The closest thing I ever got to a helpful answer outside of here, of course, was a pastor friend of mine said, think of it as a gift you're giving someone that's left unwrapped. Said, for you can forgive, and you can wrap up a gift that says that forgiveness is in there. If whether they open that gift or not, that's on them at some point. But you need to have the mentality of, I have forgiven before God, and that gift is there anytime you show up in my life.
Yeah, and that connects beautifully to how I understand what Jesus did for us on the cross, because he died for the sin of the world, every single individual person, and that is a gift that is available to you. I heard someone one time say, it's like you want a sweepstakes and there's a car that's been put in your name that's sitting in your driveway, but you don't enjoy the benefits of that car until you go out and get in the car and drive the car, or you don't get to have the gift until you open the gift. And so in a similar way, Jesus has died for the sin of the world, but you don't enjoy the benefit of that and being a part of the kingdom of God unless you open the gift. And I think that kind of models that for us.
Spoken like a true evangelist.
I remember being on the other side of that one time, because there was something that a person perceived a group of us that did wrong, and we thought we didn't. And he sent a group text and said, "Hey, I forgive you." And then somebody wrote back, "For what?" And I just remember, like, that's probably not a great response for that, because
buddy of mine got one of those once upon a time too. I forgive you. Okay.
like, yeah, but that's the thing, because you can be offended by something, and the other person doesn't even have a clue, and so it's almost like if you get that from somebody, you probably need to go to that person like, "Hey, in my defense, I don't think that I did anything wrong in this. Just show me what the offense was," because it does. I mean, I remember carrying that, like, not that one, but the pumpkin thing, where I'm like, "Oh, I'm so mad," and they didn't know, like, they didn't know that I was mad at them and all this stuff, and so.
Well, I think that's also, there's a difference between offense and actually sinning against. Sinning against is breaking the law against somebody. Offense is oftentimes in the eye of the beholder. It just is. Like, if I say a joke that would normally kill the room, but for whatever reason that joke struck a nerve with Braxton because of some past experience he had, that would put me in a very different position where it's like, oh, well, that's offensive. It doesn't mean I literally broke a law and sinned against you and against God. It's just literally I offended my brother, and that's a bit different.
Paul says, if eating meat offends my brother, I'll not eat meat. The whole point was, it's not a sin, but if it's going to bother him, then maybe we consider that. And there are limitations to that, right? But the point is, I think that matches what you're saying.
Yeah.
And the most consistent thing you'll see, and you guys have brought it up, is that forgive as the Lord forgave you. Forgive as the Lord forgave you is kind of throughout the entire New Testament. It's the principle. You have received forgiveness. So, the woman who washed Jesus' feet, and they compares their debts. If you were forgiven X amount of dollars, and you would be, he was forgiven much, loves much. And the more you recognize about your own level of the forgiveness you've received, that's the one that you can give. And so that was the other thing that helped me kind of cross that bridge. I think we've all said that in one way or the other. So Here's the other thing that's worth noting, is it says that a lot in the New Testament inside churches. Forgive one another, forgive one another, forgive one another. You know what that means? You're going to be served up things to forgive. That's what it's going to be. It assumes that reality. You are in a community, and we're, a lot of times as Protestants, we're not the greatest at that. We just go start at the church. But that's for another day. Anyway, thanks. We're out of time, guys. Erika Kirk. I almost said her name wrong, and I felt really bad.
Erika Kirk is hard to.
It is. Thank you very much, defending my oldness here. But great inspiration, amazing demonstration, and if you have never received that forgiveness from Jesus, please do. It's as simple as just believing and receiving. Go for it. We'll see you next time.